Welcome Wargamers to the grimmest corners of the mortal realms, because today we are talking about Mournhold, or as it's known today, Ulfenkarn. The awesome folks over at Cubicle 7 sent me a copy of Ulfenkarn, A City at the Edge of Death, which is a new supplement that's coming out for Soulbound. If you haven't heard about this, Age of Sigmar has a role-playing game. It's fantastic, go check it out. I've had an immense amount of fun reading this and exploring the city from their perspective. And in this series, we're going to do just that, explore the city. But I'm going to approach it a little bit differently because it's a different kind of lore book, right? Of course, with a role-playing game, there's things I don't want to spoil. There's stuff that players need to explore for themselves. And it's going to look a little different than, say, the general lore that I did when the game Warhammer Quest Cursed City came out, which I'm going to leave a link to down below and put them all in the same playlist, just to kind of keep everything together for folks as a resource. And so I'm going to cover Ulfenkarn in this series as if I was a GM or trying to supplement a GM's knowledge. Doing the info dumping so that other players can understand a given region or how the city functions so that you don't have to. So all that to say, if you're playing Soulbound, get this book, and these videos will act as a spoiler-free introduction to the city. I don't foresee myself doing spoiler versions, but if I do, they will be very clearly marked. Now, one thing I want to add here at the top, if you're interested in Soulbound and following along, you want to pre-order this, I have several links to different stores in my Linktree link down below. Each one of them will save you money, so whichever you prefer, if there's one you already shop at. Every time you use one of those links, you support Cubicle 7, that small business owner, and myself. And it goes to making everything possible for this channel. It supports me, my wife, our cats, the whole thing, and I could not be more thankful. Also, let me know in the comments down below if you want me to keep doing Soulbound. I did it for a little bit, and then I stopped receiving supplements, so I just kind of assumed that they weren't happy with me or people weren't interested, so let me know. And so we're going to begin our story by hopping into the way, way back machine to the long-forgotten Age of Myth. Mankind, along with several other species like dwarves and all that kind of stuff, were flourishing throughout just about every single corner of the mortal realms, even here in the realm of death, Shyish. It seems counterintuitive to be a living thing in the realm of death, but as with all the realms, the closer to the center you get, the more stable it is, and it can kind of be like a very traditional fantasy setting if you want it at the center of any given realm. And so it seems odd, but it was actually quite harmonious. Ancestors of several of these people and tribes would rule alongside their descendants, sharing all kinds of wisdom, manpower, so like you can have that literal skeleton army to build stuff overnight, and more. And it was in these prosperous times, a small settlement was founded in these prime inner lands of Shyish, in a misty island known as Sargorond. The area seemed really good for farming, and so the town of Mournhold was founded there, starting as nothing but a tiny keep and some peasant hovels lining its perimeter. Basically, the idea back in the Age of Myth was it's a good channel fortification for like bringing supplies in from the sea. So they acted as a trade hub, essentially, a naval trade hub specifically, controlling all the flow into and out of that particular river area. But during the momentous growth across the Age of Myth, this town developed into something truly great. First off, it solidified itself as a premier naval power within Shyish, which is cool if you happen to live near water, right? British military history can tell you that much. It's good to be the naval guy if you're on an island. Beyond that, the population of the city then exploded, because now they went from just having a good naval army fleet to the most powerful merchant army, just making like commerce happen, delivering goods to other settlements, bringing things in from other realms. And so with this, the town grew into a city, and from a city into a medieval metropolis. But like most things, it was not to last. The Age of Chaos came when the Great Four Chaos Gods unleashed their armies and bled every single realm almost simultaneously. Now, Mournhold itself, this city that was founded here on this island, didn't directly play a part in any of that. But like everything else, it was affected by it, by the tides of history and war. Army after army from various chaos gods came and just smashed against the walls of Mournhold. Each of these was repelled, but every single time it happened, it left the city a bit weaker. because the world's on fire. Like the flow of commerce is stopped. Everyone's just kind of whittling down the resources that they happen to have stored. Finally, an army led by a demon prince of Khorne arrives. That character's name is Slawn, and begins besieging the city. Cannons pounded the walls for several seasons, and it was clear that they were just going to wither. At some point, the defenses were going to fall, the Khorne army was going to come in, and they were just helpless because they were starving by this point. So there's a lot of hopelessness going on until some of the scouts look upon the horizon and they see what looks like ships with black sails coming at them, specifically with the heraldry of a wolf painted on them. A vampire known as Radjikar the Wolf had appeared. Now, this is some serious Viking assault stuff, okay? They don't drop anchor, they don't like lower a ramp, they just crash the ships into the shore, and like vampires, thralls, and their summoned minions just pour out at charging speed. And while the battle was super rough, Radjikar took the win. Now, at this point, no one in the city is stoked, right? They might have seen a Chaos army be driven off, but they didn't know if they had just traded one, Dark Master for another. But Radjikar approaches the gates and basically pronounces that he came as a savior, not as a conqueror. So he's like, I smashed those away. Let's chat. Don't assume I'm an enemy. Let's just have a conversation. As native Shyixians, which they all are at this point, but they have a few more things in common than various Chaos warbands. And so to the Council of Mournhold, he pitches an offer. He said, I'll leave if you guys want me to, and you can die to the hands of the next Chaos warband that comes by. Or I can stay and act as the shield of the city. In return, I want a place on the court, a home of my own, and a voluntary blood tithe. Now this is an interesting offer, because off the bat, the city rulers are looking at this like, well, we don't really want him in like the nobility, but that's not an unreasonable request for the guy who's going to be the sole, authority when it comes to defense of our entire kingdom. The home, that's no problem, because we kind of want him isolated anyway, so we'll punt him off to the side. And the blood tithe makes sense, because if you have an army of vampires at your side, you have to keep them fed, otherwise they can't do their jobs. And so it's just a lot of like, I don't like this devil's bargain, but all the requests seem very reasonable, and I need him. And that's really what it is that there's not really a choice here, because Radjikar has the army, but he is running out of food. Like, it's one of those weird situations where two death factions mutually need one another. The mortals need Radjikar the Soulblight vampire curse to defend their city. He needs a stable blood supply, and when Chaos warbands go and wipe out entire populations, leaving only like their corrupted ichor and stuff like that, he's starving. So it's not as ridiculous of a choice of like, letting the enemy into your camp as it might seem on the front. And seeing how great it was to have a supernatural murder machine on their side, the leaders of Mournhold said yes. Radjikar was given a citadel on the far edge of the city and a seat on the court. Now, to be honest, things go really well for a time, because he keeps his end of the bargain. But his plan was always meant to be slow, because he's immortal. He can, honor the deal that he made with this generation and then maybe start making secrets with the future generations. These younger courtiers, nobles, and citizenry start to notice a change in the overall vibe of the court. Because even though Radjikar just has one seat on this council, he has an immense amount of power and influence. He has the army, but he also has the gift of immortality. People want to be vampires, if only so that they're not as weak as the Age of Chaos is making them feel. And slowly, the minor players begin to tip the scales. He starts influencing and making promises to this next generation that as they get older can move things in Radjikar's favor. Again, very slow plotting. He's kind of building up his little informant network, that kind of thing. And stuff stays kind of in that state for quite a long time. So much so that most of the main story for Age of Sigmar, like the game itself, is just kind of going on in the background, right? The forces of order came back, started punching chaos in the face again. Nobody here cared. And that is until the necroquake. Now, to greatly simplify a long story, I have a dedicated video to the necroquake here. Please go watch that. Nagash is the god of undeath magic. And he had the idea to do a big ritual that essentially channels all death magic into him, like a siphon, but it didn't go as planned, and so when the spell went off, a blast of death magic swept across the entire setting. And with that, in that moment, especially being in Shyish, Radjikar's powers swelled to unseen levels. Now, another thing to note here about the necroquake, it also destabilized Shyish. I had mentioned in the beginning that all the realms are the most stable in the dead center. This spell broke the realm, so now there's like this big warp of death magic, like not super far off from the city's borders. That becomes relevant. We're going to talk about it more tomorrow. It's called the Nadir. But regardless of how close or far they are from that, like this big influx of death magic makes all of these vampires, their thralls, everything just boom with power. And the city before, it was gone. It was hanging in there. It was very resilient, but stable. And Radjikar used this moment to clean house. Again, he was planning this long game, but now this big flux of power came and he's going to use it. Any ruler or noble that wanted him gone, or even just had a vague distrust of Radjikar, was killed along with their entire families, because now you have to deal with the entire court, lineage line stuff. And lesser nobles were either killed or became like these lackeys. And one of the cool things you'll see as you go exploring the city is the varying degrees of how his favor manifests to his various minions. Because it's not as binary as human or vampire kind of a thing. There's different levels of thralls and the power that he bequeaths onto them. The humans that didn't resist were herded in like cattle to the housing districts of the city. Anyone else was food. And in this blood orgy where thousands were slaughtered amongst the populace, Radjikar the Wolf renamed the city Ulfenkarn, a new kingdom with a new master. And that roughly brings us to the current era, which we're going to cover in tomorrow's video, stepping into the modern world of Ulfenkarn. I'm going to approach it in two ways. One, as if it were like a documentary where you're getting just the facts. And the second half of the video is going to be more of like a boots on the ground, point of view kind of perspective of what this is actually like. Like I said, if you want to know more about AOS Soulbound, please let me know in the comments down below. I would be happy to do that. I will say that Cubicle 7 is very awesome to work with. They're great folks over there. So go support them by grabbing these, whether you use my links or not. I don't care. It's a great game and I'd like to see it continue. Let me know your thoughts about Ulfenkarn and what you would like to know more about as we're exploring the city, and I will do the videos for you. So thank you so much and happy wargaming.